As soon as the U.S. government found out about the Neutral Olympics, their intelligence agencies were tasked with infiltrating it.
But at the time, intelligence agencies were a very new concept. The modern CIA was built out of the wartime Office of Strategic Services, or OSS.
And they weren't, well, competent.
You think about the CIA now and you think dark, sinister, efficient, the puppet masters of regime change and geopolitics.
But it takes practice to get to that point, and in 1944, they hadn't had enough.
Me and Nate used the time room to go back to 1944 London and shop for old-timey clothes.
It was a gold mine. Our Depop page is popping off.
As we were walking out of the cafe, we ran smack dab into a small, frail man in a trench coat.
In that moment, a microphone, a giant recording device, and roughly 50 yards of recording tape fell out of the man's chest.
He tried to run, but all the tape got wound around his feet and he fell and landed on his face.
We took him to an alley and beat the shit out of him.
It's not too often that we get to be the tough guys in an interaction, so we really relish this opportunity.
Stop, please. I'll tell you everything.
Take that.
What's your name?
Charlie Pussy. Please, no! I'm serious. It's not spelled the way you think it is. It's spelled P-H-U-S-E-E.
That's awful.
Who do you work for? Why are you following us?
I work for the OSS. They told me to follow you. I had to fly here, and you know how I get on planes.
No, we don't.
But we can imagine. Are we a threat to the OSS?
Everyone is a threat to the OSS. We're weak, and there's 9 of us. But no, not you specifically. The government is very interested in the so-called Neutral Olympics. Think about it. All these small countries who refuse to join the U.S. military effort and follow America's orders, and all their leaders and athletes coming to one little island all at once. Do you get it?
You can take them out with one big splat.
It's a perfect starter mission for the OSS. It's like fish in a barrel, the game the older guys in the Citadel invented when they put my clothes in a barrel and threw it in the lake and I had to fish it out.
So the OSS infiltrated the Olympics? Who's an asset? Who's involved?
Oh no, a cyanide pill.
No, that was a jelly bean.
Oh shit, he called for backup.
No, that's my mother. She's here to pick me up from King of Prussia, Pennsylvania.
How'd she get here so fast?
No, I called her 5 days ago. I was homesick.
Get in the damn car, Charlie.
Coming, Mommy!
Bye, Mrs. Pussy.
April 9th, 1944. 2 months before the scheduled start of the Neutral Olympics. Construction begins on the north side of the island on Olympic facilities and an Olympic village.
Each participating country volunteered a company of 50 soldiers to assist with construction and also act as crowd for the games. Tales of continent-wide devastation from Europe and total island decimation from the Pacific Ocean had reached the ears of these enlisted men, and they were pissed off to be missing out.
But they had their work cut out for them here. Easter Island currently had a grand total of 0 of the spaces and equipment needed to stage the Olympics.
No swimming pools, no sporting arenas. They did have the world's biggest cockfighting ring, but that wouldn't become an Olympic event until 1984, and then again in 2028. So that would be repurposed into the Greco-Roman wrestling space.
This was the first of many slights against the indigenous people of Easter Island, about 1,000 of whom lived in the island's town of Hangaroa.
Yes, sir. Reading you loud and clear. Clear. The clock has started. The clock has started. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Hangin' Roa, Easter Island's only morning radio and prank show. I'm Easter Bob.
And I'm Easter Tom.
Today's news, boy, do we hate the Olympics.
Yeah, we can't access any of our island, and they keep borrowing stuff from us.
Yeah, sure hope we don't do anything about it. Last night, the basketball arena was built, and the plank saw disappeared.
In other news, wood sale at Easter Ricky's house. We'll be there with a lemonade stand.
We had some representatives from a place called San Marino stop by our station looking for the missing wood. Then, a bunch of other Italian guys wearing big robes appeared on the bluff, and they started throwing increasingly large rocks at them. When the first Olympics people came here, they said they were neutral? News to us.
Anyway, now that the news is over, it's time for some prank semaphore. Easter Richard is down on the beach signaling with his flags to a passing freighter. Oh shit, what's he spelling out? C-E-B. Oh shit. They're saying there's an iceberg ahead. We're on the Tropic of Capricorn, dude. That's so crazy. They're gonna freak out. Oh, they passed us. They didn't see it.
The leaders from each of the 12 countries were starting to arrive, along with their small armies, and were increasingly crammed into a small island the size of Staten Island, where the locals did not like them.
But at least they were a unified front as fellow participants in a daring undertaking, and they were committed to maintaining peace.
We went to war immediately.
Turkish Army Colonel and pole vaulter Ermegerd Fubug recounts the inciting incident.
It began with a very friendly kebab contest between us and Yemen. Almost at once, lots of screaming started, and someone, won't say who, started fighting with kebab swords. Meat still on them.
After several hours of pushing and shoving, the fight was broken up.
Troy Helenov, sensing impending mass violence, called a big meeting with representatives from every country. I told them that I was aware that these countries, though small, have deep roots and complex histories, but in a world torn apart by war, we had a tremendous opportunity to create the only place on Earth where these conflicts and strife could be forgotten, if just for a few weeks. Unfortunately, no one really heard me because of the weather-appropriate clothing I was wearing.
It was 82 and humid that day, but Troy was dressed, well...
We got a picture here and he's dressed like a beach slut. This was proper gentleman's summer wear.
A bright green mesh shirt is gentlemanly?
It's breathable and good for safari. And the shorts were worn by King Edward. He went to the beaches at Dover and was photographed many times wearing those little shorts that say "Suck Me" on the back. S-U-C-K-M-E. The Suck Me family tailoring company has been making royal shorts since the War of the Roses. Having Suck Me is equivalent to a knighthood in England.
The mesh shirt and Suck Me shorts got several of the competitors in a pretty big tizzy. The San Marino and the Vatican delegations could be seen biting their bottom lips and doing the snapping thing with your wrist and tapping your pointer finger against your middle finger and thumb thing that guys do.
But the outfit wasn't the only part of the equation. If you haven't figured it out by now, Troy Helenov is a fucking dime.
A total babe.
One of the hottest dudes we have ever seen.
Timelessly sexy. I had a hard time making eye contact with him.
6'1", $160, but somehow kind of jacked throughout. Green eyes that always seem to be gazing off at some sort of secret that only the chosen masters of the universe are allowed to see.
He's got a real David Beckham vibe, but like if David Beckham was in Twilight.
Yeah, so that, coupled with the fact that he looked like a whore, drove the Vatican and San Marino representatives into a state of lust psychosis.
Troy Helenov was a real, I can't remember the literary device for the type of beauty that causes wars, you know, like the type of face that launches 1,000 ships. All right, but whatever that is, that's Troy Helenov.
After the meeting, Cardinals Azizi and Fug Shugley invited Troy to a wine-drinking contest they were holding in the woods later that night.
However, he was also invited to the woods by the San Mariners, who were hosting their weekly game of kiss tag that night.
He didn't go because he had to leave the island to meet up with Humphrey Bogart's people to get him to show up for the opening ceremonies.
There wasn't any real woods on Rapa Nui, just one copse of about 50 trees, so Cardinals Azizi and the Tinchy Winchy brothers went to the exact same place. They could see each other coming from a half-mile away.
And once they got there, the smashing each other over the head with wine bottles commenced. The fighting spread fast as the entire San Marino army ran headlong into the thicket, matched for pace by the beautiful young men of the Vatican's Swiss Guard.
You're hearing swords clanging because the Swiss Guard are historically armed with swords and metal breastplates. The San Mariners ran so quickly that they forgot to bring their guns, and then double forgot that they had never brought guns to the island in the first place. They were there to be neutral and do construction, so they fought with hammers.
The fighting spread to the tent village that all the armies were staying in. The San Mariners tried stealing the Irish soldiers' booze to make Molotov cocktails, which in Ireland is a literal declaration of war, so the Irish got involved first.
They started flinging rocks at the San Mariners, several of which went wide and hit a group of Turkish soldiers. The Turks ripped the wooden stakes out of their tents and started running after the Irish like they were Chucky.
And at that point, it was on. The violence was uncontainable and seized the soldiers from every country.
Several thousand miles from the farthest reaches of World War II, World War III had broken out.
Maybe it was World War II and a half, since it would be weird if World War III ended before World War II did.
Either way, because World War II had pretty much all the guns, World War III was fought with sticks and rocks. So that Albert Einstein quote from Call of Duty 4 was a war number off.
Throughout the second half of April, boats carrying more personnel involved in the Olympics arrived on the shores of Rapa Nui, and the crews were immediately under fire.
Not a hail of gunfire, more a shower of rocks and arrows, but that shower had really bad water pressure.
But on one of those boats was the duo of announcers that would be broadcasting the Neutral Olympics to the world.
Welcome back to World War III on Easter Island. No sports of any kind to report, and we can't really get a good view of what's happening, and there are no bystanders. Except for the people of Hongaroa, I can see them pointing and laughing now. Wowza, somebody on Ireland got real close with an arrow.
That was a fucking spear.
I think you're right, Tootsie. I thought it was a big arrow at first. I am learning so much about the world.
The commentary crew covering the Neutral Olympics was an odd pair to say the least.
With all the well-known broadcasters doing USO shows and propaganda for the Allies, the broadcasting company was left scrambling to form a radio team.
Until they remembered that the Nazis had incredible success with growing a perfect humanoid in a jar to use as a play-by-play announcer for the 1936 Berlin Olympics.
This homunculus was known as Eglert and, while very skilled, had a tendency to expire after a couple years into a state that you and I would call being dead.
This Eglert variation was the fifth one. He had been made for the 1940 Olympics, but when that was canceled, he was left on ice for 4 years. The Americans smuggled him out of a laboratory in Dusseldorf as a test run for, let's just say, later smugglings.
I'm Eglert 5 alongside Tootsie Tea Time. Tootsie, I know you were picked because, well, frankly, we don't have any color guys for Olympic stuff, but you played baseball for all the 1890s and 00s. But we don't have any of that either. We just have war. What do you know about war? Is it good or bad?
One time I put brass knuckles on instead of batting gloves. It made me really bad at hitting, but I got an inside the park home run once. I knocked out the first baseman, the second baseman, the shortstop, the third baseman, the left fielder. He was backing up the play. The catcher, I did some dirty things to his spleen, and I chased the center fielder all the way home.
Tootsie Tea Time was one of the first ever radio broadcasters in the history of baseball. He retired after a 15-year radio career in 1925.
At the time of the Olympics, he was 74.
As a catcher from 1893 to 1908, he was the last of a dying breed, the men who refused to wear masks or chest protectors.
When he was signed to the Allentown Headless Horsemen in 1908 at the end of his career, he finally succumbed to the pressure from the league to don the protective equipment.
And that's when I looked at Commissioner Chick Johnwick, and I said, "You may be the commissioner, but I'm older than you, and I've killed more men than you. Sure, I'll put on your little costume, but when I go to catch, I'll be taking off my glove and my pants, and everyone behind home plate is going to see my wilderness."
Wonderful story, Tootsie. I remember you telling me that when this broadcast started not 10 minutes ago. So I'd hate to hear this story a third time. So let's turn our attention to the war action.
Look at the Portuguese over there. They're betraying the Irish.
Now, Tootsie, I know nothing of the Portuguese people. Is betrayal something they do often?
Yes, this exact thing happened to the Cleveland Spiders in 1902.
As happens in all wars, the combatants splintered into two clearly defined sides.
Through bribery and trickery, the various armies rallied around either side of the San Marino-Vatican conflict.
On the Vatican side were Ireland, Yemen, and nominally Tibet, but the monks they sent were mostly mumbling into boulders. The Irish did most of the fighting, so this side called themselves the Celtics.
On San Marino's side were Turkey, Bhutan, and a small group of Portuguese who had arrived in the middle of the night by parachute and had suits and guns with silencers. Ermagerd Fubug led his forces to victory at the Battle of Up the Road a Bit and at the Battle of Down the Way Around the Bend, so he christened his army the Lakers after Turkey's famous lakes.
Good morning and welcome back to the Battle of By the Bathrooms. The fighting between the Lakers and the Celtics has been raging since before dawn with upwards of 10, 20 injuries. Tootsie Tea Time, you were in some fights back in the day on the Diamond.
Those were the glory days. Before the 30s, when all these young kids turned pussy and demanded to get paid. Anyway, I demand blood, and so do the folks at home, and so do our sponsors.
You're right. All I'm seeing, a lot of bruises and sprained ankles. Well, they do only have clubs and sticks.
That's bullshit. I slit someone's throat with a baseball once.
What's that?
The Rapture.
Not yet. I think it's actually a third army.
A third army had been formed on the north side of the island overnight, along with an unlikely friendship.
Switzerland and Afghanistan's military battalions had been hiking to the tallest point on Easter Island, the rim of Maunga Teravaka, the volcanic crater that sat a whopping half-kilometer above sea level.
The two groups met at the summit and bonded over their love of mountaineering and being neutral, and the next day, when they saw the battles of Up the Road a Bit and of Down the Way Around the Bend, they turned their neutrality into one badass cavalry.
The Afghani soldiers are riding in on horses and they're holding grown Swiss men? They use the momentum and launch the Swiss through the air.
I used to play the goat carcass game with some Afghani guys during my minor league days, and they can really sling those dead goats. The Swiss men are gliding on skis. They're floating for an impossible amount of time, and they crash land on top of the scrum.
Oh, they're gonna give it to them now, Toots. And they're just slapping everyone. Yeah, just open palm slapping the people underneath them. That is anticlimactic, given the pageantry and coordination necessary to pull off such a maneuver.
A few minutes later, the three sides retreated to hastily assembled base camps on three different corners of the island. Exhausted from hours of hand-to-hand combat, each army began building fortifications, hunkering down for what everyone assumed would be a long and bloody affair.
It was really getting down to crunch time for the upcoming Olympic Games. The athletes would all have arrived soon, and if there was no place for them to sleep and compete, the Neutral Olympics would be over before it could get started.
But the armies refused to yield, and each spent the next day fortifying their positions.
And the next day, they did the same.
And the day after that.
And the day after that.
Look, I saw a head. Shoot it.
Nope, false alarm. That was near the Vatican's trench, but it was I don't know what that was.
It was a squirrel. How the fuck did a squirrel get to Easter Island?
Well, I don't know what that is, because I've lived in a series of fridges and press boxes my entire life, but nothing new to report from the Battle of the Trenches. All three armies have been hard at work refortifying, but as soon as dawn comes, they sprint to their trenches in fear and dive or cannonball in as hard as they can. They jump in so quickly that their helmets sometimes float in the air, and they have to reach up with their arm really long and pull them down.
Eglert, you're very good at your job. I used to work with the old ball player, Flick Beanie, broadcasting egg spinning competitions, and he used to get distracted on account of the fumes he inhaled as a child laborer. And he would swallow the microphone whole so the crowd could learn what a tummy sounded like. But you don't do that. I want to take you back to America and open a cheese shop with you.
The three-way trench warfare brought all of the center of Easter Island to a stalemate. It was especially hard to fight trench warfare because the armies did not have many of the weapons that made trench warfare necessary.
They mostly just sat in holes with hammers and waved their fists at each other like Mr. Wilson at Dennis the Menace.
It was just like Denise the Menace, famous Turkish children's show. Proud Mr. Wilson must suffer from dirty Greek child Denise.
Colonel Ermegerd Fubug was in the middle of the action for the entire World War, but none of his tactics worked.
The Turkish javelin champion Jovulun was our secret weapon, but unfortunately when he threw his javelin at San Marino, he forgot to let go, so it went into the ground and ended up flinging him into their trench, where he was savagely beaten. We tried to rescue him by throwing all of our sticks at that trench, but all the sticks were so bent from 2 days of World War that they became boomerangs and came back and hit all of us.
Any attempts by the three factions to attack the others led only to self-inflicted injuries from tripping and falling. After a few days, all of the soldiers became so gun-shy that they refused to leave their trenches altogether.
Instead, the three sides all decided to double down on building defenses. They settled in, not for trench warfare, but for siege warfare. And they all built their defenses according to different theories on how to build fortifications.
We built a genius little house for us and our army.
The Vatican and the Swiss Guard worked tirelessly, building a structure 5 stories tall in one night.
It wasn't a fortress, but with lots of amenities. It was a big circle, a sort of grass basking pavilion in the middle. But we had a huge wall in the circle, but we got little steps in it the whole way around for sitting and talking a strategy.
The fortress had 30 different gates in case the Vatican needed to flee in one of 30 directions. It was actually incredibly easy to get in and out of, like it was designed for thousands of people who needed speedy ingress and egress.
The central courtyard of the fortress had a running track, football uprights, and a sand pit that the Vatican would practice military jumps into.
And instead of having all of our food in one vulnerable granary, we spaced them out at a series of stands all around the circle, all protected by waist-high counters and condiment stations. We invented Dippin' Dots because it's good for the soldiers. Good energy.
The next day, the last of the Olympic athletes arrived and Troy returned, not to a desolate wasteland of violence and warfare, but a completely finished and impeccably organized Olympic village.
I was immeasurably impressed. I did not expect the Olympic Coliseum village and supply storage area to be built with such precision and teamwork.
As you might have already put together, the Vatican and its allies had built a fortification that perfectly resembled a Colosseum.
The San Marinian faction built their fortifications with the belief that whoever had the best trained army would be victorious. So they heavily invested in combat training areas. A swimming pool for water-based infiltration attacks, an area for practice launching their hammers across no man's land, which they lazily named the hammer toss, and a zone for them to practice accuracy for their rock throws, which featured a metal circle and a nylon netting so that their rocks would have a softer landing.
And finally, the Swiss and Afghanis figured whoever was the most rested would outlast the others, so they built structures and filled them with top-of-the-line mattresses and bed frames.
So with that, the Olympic Village and all other necessary structures were built, entirely on accident.
Troy Helenov and the arriving athletes were so pleased with the facilities that they immediately began to set up for the opening ceremonies that night. Within 5 hours, the stage was set for the first night of festivities.
Welcome to the 1944 Olympics opening ceremonies here on Easter Island.
150 athletes from 10 countries have traveled across the globe to be here with us. And here they come now.
We also have Troy Helenov in the booth with us. Troy, I'll ask the question I think is on everybody's mind.
Where the hell are the celebrities, you dick?
Oh, well, that's not the question I expected to answer.
You heard the man. Answer now. Now.
Exceptional journalism, Eglert.
Well, it's a very difficult time for travel, and, everybody's schedules are so...
I heard they've all been at the Battle of Monte Cassino and everyone's getting blackjack.
Well, it's hard to compete with the biggest party the world has ever seen. Humphrey Bogart said he was interested.
Oh, I like him. You're off the hook. For now, Beanpole.
Oh, shit! Half the teams have already gone through the opening ceremonies.
Yes, well, normally 200 teams do the Olympics, so we move everyone through here quick. But this time we only have 10.
With the opening ceremonies almost over after 3 minutes, a late arrival showed up.
And now the Swiss delegation prepares to enter the parade. Look at that! They're on skis! How nice!
Hello, please wait, I am here. Start it over. Go back to A. I am here from Andorra.
Oh, shit. It's the necromancer. Eglert, it's the necromancer everyone's warned us about.
Oh, relax, you big wuss. There is no necromancer. And you can tell that's true because as I said it, my body temperature dropped 20 degrees and my nose started bleeding.
It wasn't the necromancer, but nobody was sure how this man got there. It wasn't like another boat had arrived. It was like he just sort of materialized.
His name was Johan Reversch, and he was the lone representative from the country of Andorra. He stood 5'4" and weighed 97 pounds, but the most notable thing about him was his attire.
He wore a white button-down shirt, suspenders, and I wouldn't call them pants. They were more a burlap sack that he fashioned into pants with rubber bands and a rope.
He was wearing someone else's shiny black dress shoes. They were 2 sizes too big and untied.
So this is some guy named Joan Riverex from Endor.
It's actually pronounced Johan Reversch from the very small country of Andorra, nestled in the middle of the Pyrenees Mountains between France and Spain. This arrival is quite a surprise. Andorra never officially requested a spot here at the Olympics.
I think this guy's a streaker, or a communist, or some kind of fucked up infiltrator. Look at him. He looks like a human ant. I know an athlete when I see one. They look like me, or Babe Ruth, or William Howard Taft.
Well, he's doing a lovely dance. He's jumping and crossing his legs back and forth, and now he's leaning to one side and snapping his fingers. Now he's holding his arms out to his sides, and his hands are in fists. And he's shuffling horizontally to the left, and now to the right.
He was doing the soldier boy. Isn't that funny, guys?
After his lap in the opening ceremony was complete, Johan Reversch went straight to the commentator's table and grabbed the microphone.
Hello, Easter Island and Olympic radio doctors. Nice to meet me. I am Johan Reversch from Andorra.
You're not going to take your cock out, are you? You some kind of infiltrator?
No, that stay in pants. But you know what come out of pants?
Oh, $3. Thank you.
Yes, much more where that came from. I, richest man in Andorra, and everybody favorite guy.
That is very interesting. And you're an athlete as well, I take? Is there an event that's your specialty?
Oh, all. I do all event. Everybody favorite guy.
I don't believe him for 1 second. He's nasty. He's hustling us.
Well, we got swimming tomorrow morning to kick things off. You gonna get in the water?
Oh, maybe. Not so much swimming in Andorra, but maybe I give it a whirl.
10,000 on Andorra. Most gold medals. Yeah. 10,000. Andorra. It's in a French mountain. It's like their Colorado. I don't care if it's not on the odds sheet, or that amount of money will be the equivalent of $180,000 in 81 years. Why would you even say that?
Well, we missed all of Switzerland, Tibet, Turkey, and the Vatican's introductions. Here comes Yemen, and they're done.
They're waving. That sucked.
Yeah, that was really quick. I guess opening ceremonies make more sense when you have 195 countries involved.
With the Parade of Nations complete, it was time to light the famous Olympic torch.
The torch ceremony usually incorporates elements from the host country's culture, and people from the host country are usually heavily involved.
On this night, a group of soldiers dressed in giant papier-mâché Easter Island heads run into the center of the stadium. Several of them trip and run into each other because they can't see. None of these men were from Easter Island.
Troy Helenov instructed his chief custodial officer to dig up a real Easter Island head to serve as the base for the Olympic torch to sit once lit.
I almost did that shit, man. I was really close. Like, I really tried.
William Nilliam was the night custodian at the offices of the IOC, and after the rest of them died, that made him technically second in command.
Yeah, so while Troy handled the big picture stuff, I kind of took over the day-to-day boots on the ground situation. So anything that involved a shovel, I was on that. I don't really mess with anything above that type of purview, but if there's a shovel involved, that's my domain. So I was all over the task of digging up a real Easter Island head and transporting it to the arena for opening ceremonies. Fortunately, all the shovels had sort of been commandeered by the war that broke out on the island. I tried digging it out with my hands like a damn dog.
This didn't work, and eventually William Nilliam gave up and built a very shoddy and disrespectful fake head out of egg cartons and pine tar. And he built 5 Easter Island heads for soldiers to wear and dance around it.
The Easter Island heads are doing a beautiful dance. I know nothing about most cultures around the world and have an extremely narrow band of references because I was made in a jar. But I am sure this is very accurate and traditional to the land of Rapa Nui.
Those are jumping jacks.
Aha! Somebody should tell Jack the events don't start until tomorrow.
At 6:59 p.m., the Olympic torchbearer arrived on the shore of Easter Island.
It had traveled the entire length of 55 nautical yards. A small boat pushed off from the beach with a t-shirt wrapped around a stick. Said shirt was lit on fire by a blunt, and the boat turned around and went back to the beach.
We spoke to Troy Helenov the morning after the ceremony.
I'm hesitant to tell you this, although your radio shows are told to an audience in the future. Tens of thousands must listen, or they wouldn't have bothered to send you back to the past, correct?
Yes.
I do worry about it somehow getting back to my bosses back in the 30s. Although they are all dead now.
Yeah, dude, I think you're good.
All right. Well, the torch ceremony is bullshit.
You mean one guy doesn't run all the way around the world, and if the torch goes out, he has to start over?
You don't actually think that, do you?
Maybe.
It is not a time-honored tradition spanning back thousands of years. It was done for the first time in 1936. And sure, they had fires going at the Olympic events in ancient Greece, but, those were lights. That's how they lit shit. The Nazis invented it as a distraction to hide from their crimes in Greece. The German man who ran from Athens to Munich in 36 with the torch had just stolen millions in Fabergé eggs from Greece, but no one's looking at your pockets if you have the Olympic torch out.
But the torchbearer didn't know that, and he thought this was a huge honor.
And here comes the Siberian marathon runner Gurglord with the Olympic torch. I'm told that flame comes all the way from Greece by way of Siberia.
It looks like Elmer, the sound guy.
Wow, that is uncanny. Yes, Elmer, one of the guys that runs cables in and out of this room all day, looks exactly like Gurglord. Somebody tell Elmer he's got a Siberian brother.
I'm telling you, that's fucking Elmer. Yeah, $10,000 on Gurglord being Elmer.
As the Olympic torchbearer does a very sluggish jog around the field, the Easter Island head dancers behind him run into each other like a mascot race at a baseball game.
What do you mean you don't have the odds for that?
Eventually, Gurglord Elmer begins to climb the altar, which, thanks to William Nilliam, was the egg carton head with the ladder glued to it that he could clumsily walk up like a ramp.
What? Shane? No, Shane is the other sound guy. Why do you have odds for one sound guy pretending to be a Siberian marathon runner, but not the other sound guy?
As Gurglord Elmer reaches the brazier holding the torch,
his head completely explodes. It's totally gone.
Ah! Oh, fuck!
Hey, Tootsie, you've played a lot of baseball, and I grew up in a dark room with no windows. Can heads do that? Is that a medical reaction, like a sneeze?
a super long beam of light that was bullet-shaped obliterated Elmer's long oval-shaped head, then arced upwards and out of the stadium and across the plain,
where it went back to a wooden staff with an ACOG scope attached to it, held by the necromancer of Easter Island.
I did ignore multiple warnings about the necromancer, and I did ignore the advice from the Chilean government and passing sailors about not including the Easter Island heads in any sort of potential comedic or parodic situations.
The headless corpse of Elmer the sound guy drops the Olympic torch on the Easter Island head platform made out of egg cartons, and the pine tar goes extremely up in flames.
Well, the Easter Island head dancers can't see what's going on because the masks they're wearing don't have eye holes, which is crazy because the heads have eyes, so they are still doing their choreography. They're crouched down on the ground trying to crouch dance because they do know that a sniper is firing on us.
I thought I would be scared, but seeing the blood run down the ladder of the altar is really giving me Olympic fever. Bring on the hurdles!
But the Olympic flame had been lit, and the athletes were all thousands of miles from any land, let alone home. So the Olympics would go on ahead, as scheduled.
The week leading up to the 1944 Neutral Olympics had featured World War III, the construction of an entire athletic facility, and now someone had just been shot from long range by a mysterious wizard who lived in the woods.
But the party was just getting started.